All right, welcome back everyone. Today's video is going to be an interesting video because I'm going to be talking about business-to-business sales, B2B sales. In the last video, I introduced the user, the advocate, and the decision maker. In a business-to-consumer context, it's often a simpler process because all these three roles could be one and the same person. Sometimes in certain situations, it could be different people, but oftentimes it's a fairly simplified sales process. In a business-to-business context, it can become a bit more complicated because multiple stakeholders need to get involved. So there are two additional roles to look at in a B2B context. So one is the gatekeeper, and then the last one is the approver. So they don't specifically have to come in this order, but to give you a rough idea of what a map could look like for a specific product. So let's say if I'm trying to sell sales analytics software, the gatekeeper could be the receptionist, or it could be the executive assistant, right? The user could be the sales reps. The advocate could be the sales manager, and the decision maker could be the CEO. But then I might have to go through some approvers, like the IT department, or maybe even the financial department. So in certain cases, or in most cases, approvers are people who don't have the authority to say yes, but they have the ability to say no. Because the IT department might say that your technology does not meet their security compliance, or let's say your financial department might say that they don't have the budget to purchase this kind of software solution at the moment. So these are the things that you have to consider. So when you look at all these different roles then, you'll start to imagine that selling into an organization can be a fairly complicated process. But the good news is it's actually a lot easier than what it looks like over here. So I want to introduce two key concepts that will help you speed up or improve your B2B sales strategies. So the first concept that I want to look at is called the decision threshold. So what the decision threshold is in a very simplistic way of saying it, there is the pain of staying the same. So pain of staying, and you have the pain of changing. And what happens over here is, you can imagine if the pain of staying is greater than the pain of changing, someone is more likely to take action to use your product or service. It applies in the same way to a consumer context, but it's much more interesting to look at in a B2B context because there are a lot of different ideas that can come up then. So what you want to look at is most companies or most salespeople tend to focus a lot on the pain of staying. So language that speaks to the pain of staying include things like talking about the cost of not adopting new technology, talking about the ROI that could be expected from using your product or service or solution, or it could be even talking about focusing on the pain of the problem, right? So all those are languages that focus on the pain of staying. What is interesting though is if you're selling into an organization, into a business, it's actually more effective for you to focus on decreasing the pain of changing. Because the lower your pain of change, the lower pain of change is required, the lower expected ROI is required as well. Make sense? So over here, what you're looking at is how can you make it easier for someone to adopt, use, or try your product or service? Because if it's easier for them to change, like I mentioned, they have a lower expectation of what's needed in terms of results. And that makes the process a lot easier and makes the approval process a lot more simple as well. So this is the first concept, the decision threshold. The second concept I want to introduce then is now that you understand that you want to focus on the pain of changing, there is this concept called the thin edge of the wedge. So like a dull wedge, you are typically trying to sell your product or solution that is full featured over here. So it includes all this feature, it's this amount of price, it does all of these things. But what is that small thing that you can offer that will get your foot in the door, right? So if you think about this concept then, there are many different ideas that you can come up with. A few quick examples include things like decreasing the price of your product or service, offering freemium, so a free version of a specific product and then a paid version where you have more features. Offering a small, instead of offering the full service, offering a small part of their services that falls under this a similar note of freemium, but it might not be free and premium. It might be at a lower cost and then at a higher cost, right? So there are many different ways that you can come up with things. So I want to give some examples. So the best example over here is traction on demand. So Mike, our ER, was talking about traction on demand, and what they did is instead of offering their full service package, they offered a smaller report or assessment tool. So to first give you some context, traction on demand provides Salesforce CRM consulting services. So as you can imagine, selling into an organization and trying to convince them to use a CRM solution is a complicated process because it typically requires a lot of training. So people have to learn how to use the new platform. You have to change their behavior so that they now put into practice things that will allow them to track certain things. It requires a lot of approval because it integrates into all of their software solutions and platforms. So usually when you're trying to sell a CRM solution, that's probably one of the more complicated processes I can think about when it comes to selling to an organization. So what you want to do then is, instead of them trying to offer their $100,000 service consulting package and implementation package, they offered an assessment report where they would go into an organization, look at their operations, see where they needed to improve, see what they needed to streamline, identify tools that they could use. And this report would be something that was of immense value to organizations as well, because they could use that report to immediately make changes to improve their workflow, or even shop around for other tools, products, services that could help them with the process. What they found was, by selling this report at $8,000 instead of the $100,000 full service package, their conversion rate into the full service package was at about 80%. So what is that small version of the product or service? Another great example is Rungo. Craig, the CEO here in Vancouver, was talking to me about how with hotels, he found out that anything above $5,000 as a price required corporate approval. So they would price their products and services with the hotels below $5,000 because that could get an individual location to approve without going through corporate head office. So maybe it's a price thing, maybe it's offering a smaller version of product. You know, in HubSpot's cases, what they do is they offer the CRM for free. Once you start integrating, putting all your contacts into the CRM, it becomes harder for you to move away, and you're more likely to upgrade into HubSpot Sales or HubSpot Marketing. Another great example that I love is MailChimp. So they offer the full platform for free, and then what happens is if you need more contacts, more contacts in your list for you to send out your newsletters to, anything over 1,500 you have to start to pay for. So what are different ways that you can position your product, service, or solution? It might require some adjusting on your part that will allow you to get, instead of the whole subset of stakeholders to approve, you could perhaps even get an individual to actually say yes to your product or service. Because it's so easy or so simple that the risk is low. So like I mentioned, the pain of changing, the risk is low, that an individual could say yes, because they could try it out, start using it right away, instead of having approval from the managers, from the CEO, from maybe even the B2B Sales operations, things like that. So if you can make it simple, it's a lot easier to sell into an organization. So that being said, I wanted to introduce 3 other concepts or 3 other tips just to help you with speeding up your business-to-business sales processes. So I'm going to get back to the computer because it's going to be easier to show you through the computer. And I'm going to share my screen here. So the first thing I wanted to show you is the B2B prospecting map. So you should be able to see this right now. And what you're looking at is, when you're selling in a business-to-business context, especially if you're just getting started, you don't quite know who the right person is to be speaking to about your product or services. So what you want to do then is create this map. So you can see over here, I have user, advocate, approver, decision makers. And what you're doing in a B2B prospecting map is, instead of reaching to a single individual in an organization when you're trying to sell to, you're actually reaching out to multiple people at the same organization. Because if you think about it, you don't quite know at this stage who the right person to speak to is, or how they buy, how they purchase. So a common complaint that I get from a lot of organizations is that sales reps don't respect their buying process or their timeline. So if you try to map it out and understand who is the right person to speak to, it should help you getting in front of the right people more quickly. So what you can see over there is you have your different funnel steps. You have your email or call number 1, you have your email number 2, your follow-up email, maybe you have your sales calls, and then maybe you have the demo, right? So what I want to do in a simple way is, without getting into too much detail, you'll reach out to all of them, and then let's say, for example, you might find that the user or the sales rep might say yes, and then the sales manager ignores your email, doesn't reply to you, right? Maybe the approver replies to you but says, hey, you need to first speak to this other person. So there could be different ways of looking at it, but what you're trying to see is, okay, who replies to you most quickly and who actually refers you to someone else. So someone might say, no, I'm not the right person to be speaking to, but you should be speaking to XYZ, right? And then you follow up with email number 2, yada, 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 and eventually you'll find out that for an organization, there's typically a more common path into getting into the right decision maker. So for example, you might realize that, oh, it looks like the best person to reach out to is to start with speaking to sales managers, and then from sales managers, trying to get them to refer you to, let's say, their CTO, for example. And if once you know that path now, it's going to become a lot easier for you to sell to similar organizations. So start by doing this prospecting map. And then the second tip that I wanted to give is in tangent with the practice of reaching out to multiple people in a specific organization. What you want to do is you want to do top-down reach-outs as opposed to bottom-up reach-outs. So what that means is it's important to do both, but start with top-down, because you can imagine in a situation where, let's say, if you reach out to the CEO and you send him an email that says, who is the best person to speak to about sales software solutions? And if the CEO is interested in what you might have to offer, or you were able to pique his curiosity, he might forward that email off to, let's say, VP of Sales. And when his email is forwarded to VP of Sales, what's happening is the VP of Sales is getting an email from his boss, the CEO, telling him that, hey, you should check this guy out. So what happens then is there is a much higher likelihood of you securing that meeting with that next level down person. If you do it the other way, where you reach out to maybe a sales rep, maybe even if the sales rep loves your product or service, if they try to escalate it to their manager, it's going to still be fairly difficult for you to get the meeting. Because the manager, usually bottom-up processes are fairly resistant in an organization, depending on the culture. But do a bit of both. Start with top-down, because let's say if you do it in this kind of context, if you go top-down and you also go bottom-up, then by the time the VP of Sales gets the email, he'll see, oh, CEO wants me to meet with John, but I also see that my sales reps have been talking about John's product. That's interesting. I'm now interested. I'm now more likely to take the meeting. Make sense? So top down and then bottom up. And then the third quick tip is going through gatekeepers. So gatekeepers, receptionists, executive assistants, they're fairly challenging to get around. A quick tip is, there are actually 2 quick tips. So one is call or email before or after office hours. Gatekeepers typically work a regular 9-to-5 schedule, and decision makers typically are at the office before hours or even after hours as well. So if you can call before or after hours, there's a higher likelihood for you to get straight through, either to maybe the voice recording system, where you can automatically get through the right person if you press the right number, or you might get straight into their voicemail, right? Or maybe even straight to their line. But make sure you have the right script prepared so you know what to say if you actually get in front of the decision maker right away. So that's one quick tip. A second quick tip around getting through gatekeepers is to, I want to say, feign a personal connection. So for example, instead of calling and saying, hey, can I please speak to the VP of Sales, John? You might pick up the phone and say, hey, John, how's it going? And then maybe the gatekeeper might actually say, oh, sorry, this is not John's line. I'll transfer you to John, because it sounds like you already know John, right? So that could be one other way that you could try to get through a gatekeeper as well. So those are some quick tips and tricks around selling to an organization. Tune in for the next session. And I think in next session, let's see, I'm going to be talking a bit about, let me see. I'm going to be talking about sales tools and automation. So that's going to be a fun video as well, because I use a lot of tools I'm going to be introducing CRMs. I'm going to be introducing some automation tools, some email prospecting tools, some ways to do more automated stuff, through LinkedIn, through Facebook, things like that. So tune in next week for some sales tools and automation. All right, see you then.